everybody. Raul here for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the great honor and pleasure of chatting with bassist Connor Green.
Howdy, folks.
Well, many of you might recognize Connor from his work with Haken, and we're definitely going to want to talk about that. But let's go all the way back to the beginning. How did you get started in music, and particularly on bass?
Sure. Well, like some people who grow up playing music and stuff, I started on piano when I was like 5 or 6. My parents, wanted me to have the opportunity to at least try and learn an instrument, try and learn to read music. So took piano lessons for a couple of years, and natural occurrence of being that young is you have the attention span of a, fruit fly. So yeah. I tried for a while and I learned to read the music, but then I was like, I want to move on to, basketball or something else, baseball, sports, that all those, little kid things. Mm-hmm. And so I stopped for a few years, and then I went to Colorado once and saw my family, saw my cousins, and cousin had a BC Rich Warlock or whatever those things are called, those, the metal guitars.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so cool that you have that. He couldn't play it. So it was, oh, sorry, I got a cat here.
There we go.
Yeah. All right. She'll be fine. So I saw it. I was like, that's so cool. I want to be a guy that holds a guitar like that. And so I think we went to a guitar center in Colorado, got a, Squire Strat kind of combo pack thing, and went home and tried to learn songs. And I can't remember what I was trying to learn, kill switch and gauge songs, system of a down songs, or something like that on standard tuning, which was an odd idea, but probably sounded terrible for a couple of years, and then finally started to get the hang of it. And so I thought I was going to be a guitar player. That's what I wanted to be. And then got to high school, and the only opportunity for music for a stringed instrument player was going to be jazz band. And yeah, that's right. And but they already had a guitar player. And I was like, oh, well, that's all I play is guitar, so, I guess I can't be in jazz band. He's like, well, hey, we need a bass player. And I was like, I don't know anything about bass. I can't read bass clef. I don't know how it works. So I wrote a little, what's the music, the bass clef reference. So I was like, okay, these are the notes in the bass clef, so that I didn't, completely embarrass myself at class that day. Had a bass that my parents had given me for Christmas. Hadn't touched it much, but took it to jazz band and just started reading the music and trying to figure it out, and the rest is history, I suppose, after that, because I fell in love with the bass.
Gotcha. Now, after that, are you pretty much self-taught, or did you pursue further bass studies?
Well, I did. So I was self-taught for a while, all through high school, except I took lessons here or there, when I was younger, probably 8th grade, freshman year, that kind of thing. And then when it got to junior year, senior year, I thought I might want to do this in school because, I don't, it's all I like to do. I do it 8 hours a day. Mm-hmm. It's like, see if I can make this work somehow. But of course, you can go to school for electric bass, like, Berkeley, and then probably even more places these days.
Yeah.
But at the time I wanted to go to IU because it was 45 minutes down the road, Indiana University. And I had read that, okay, well, you can get a degree in jazz on upright bass. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Never played that. Looks hard. But my parents, they were like, let's do it. So we went to a bass shop and rented a big upright bass and learned to play it, and went to Indiana University for upright bass and jazz. So I kind of started falling in love with that kind of music when I was 16, 17. And yeah, did that for a whole year and a half before I auditioned for Haken and kind of put the jazz stuff behind me for a while.
Gotcha. Well, and it is always kind of fascinating because with electric and upright players, a lot of times you'll see they'll stay kind of either with one or the other. There are a handful of people that will double and kind of do both at the same time because they are so different to each other. Yeah. Like kind of once you get into one groove, it's sometimes challenging to do a lateral shift to the other instrument.
Oh, definitely. I mean, especially because not only is it a different instrument, but the styles you're going to be playing on both are so incredibly different. You might be playing a funk tune one day or a metal tune on electric bass, and then the next day you're playing a straight ahead jazz gig, and those are completely different languages. It's not an easy thing to pull double duty like that, especially, and I do gigs on guitar now too. It's like you know, 3 different instruments
Sure.
with 3 different jobs, essentially. So yeah, it's not easy.
Well, and you joined Haken around 2014, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And tell us about that whole process, because you guys have been together for quite some time now.
Yeah, well, the previous bass player, Tom, left the band in late 2013, so they put out a little Facebook. I was in college at the time. I saw like a Facebook thing about, oh, we need a bass player, and we're opening up to everyone in the world to audition. I was like, this is weird, because I was a big Haken fan in high school. I loved the Aquarius and Visions, which is their first 2 full-length albums, and I was like, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of college at this moment, so maybe I should try this, which was an odd idea because they didn't have a huge following at the time. They weren't terribly well known, but I just loved the music, and I thought, maybe this. Truthfully, I didn't think I was going to make it because I'm an American guy. They're a British band. It seemed unlikely, but I sent in an audition tape. I stopped going to all my classes essentially to work on this audition, and sent it in. They're like, "Hey, sounds good. We'll invite you to an in-person audition in London." Of course, I'd never been on a plane, never left the country, besides Canada, which was in a car, and I was kind of terrified. So I flew over by myself. I was like, planes are crazy. Wow, look at this. Oh, this is a huge city. This is London. I've never been in a city like this before. So it was just, a little bit overwhelming, and couldn't eat anything when I was over there. I was so nervous, and walked, 3 miles to the audition because I didn't understand how their subway system worked. And, I got to the audition. I didn't say, I saw all these guys that I've been listening to for years, and I didn't say a word. I was just like, I'm going to faint if I say anything, so I'm just going to play. And it went great. And the drummer, Ray, told me that night, he's like, yeah, we'd like for you to tour with us and be in the band. I was like, great. So I, fainted the next day from not eating anything. and flew home, and that was it. And luckily, however long it's been, almost 7 years now, we've, gotten along great, and some of my best friends. So, yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Now, recently, again, in the time of the pandemic, time is kind of a strange concept, but your latest album, Virus, was released in June of last year, June 19th, 2020. And how apropos, an album titled Virus in the middle of a viral pandemic. I understand that wasn't necessarily intentional, but it just how things worked out. Tell us about that album.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty massive coincidence, I suppose, because I think it was back in 2016 and 2017, our guitarist Charlie emailed us about this kind of double album concept idea he had. It was called Vector and Virus. Those were the 2 things. Of course, Vector, one of the alternative meanings is something that carries disease. So that whole thing. And so a virus. They work together, and of course they had the Vector, the V, and the Virus, and the VI. So 5 and 6, 5th and 6th studio album thing. And so we're like, that's a great idea. It's a lot of fun little Easter eggy things in there. So we kind of worked on it way back then. Some of the ideas for Virus were around when Vector was being written and recorded. And yeah, we just kind of got, I guess the bulk of the writing happened in December of 2019 when we were on tour with Devin Townsend. We were all in a bus together and thought, let's just write the album, because we had a lot of core ideas, but there's a lot more to the final product than just the core ideas, obviously. And so we're all in a bus. Let's get together and write this thing. And we spent hours every day tweaking vocal melodies, tweaking riffs, writing our own respective parts that we'd record later. And we'd never really written an album like that. It's been collaborative since Affinity, but we've always written sort of virtually or remotely.
Sure.
And never in the same room. And so it was just a different experience. I think it feels more special as an album just because of that, because we all wrote it together. And, we were able to bounce ideas off of each other. And, that's not an easy thing to do with, many people in a band butting heads. But luckily we let all the sort of reactionary, this is my idea, I don't want it to go things behind. And we're just like, yeah, let's just go for what feels right to all of us, and and it worked out in the end. I mean, I think it's a cool album.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's got a whole lot of elements that as much when I listen to prog metal, some prog can get, I'm going to say, pretty deep into the weeds a little bit. And this has a lot of melodic elements, changes, again, the vocal arrangements, the harmonies and things that you're kind of going, wait, is this prog? I don't know. I don't think this is prog. And then I don't know. There it is. You know, you start hitting kind of the staccato runs and riffs. So you're like, okay, there. That's what I was expecting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's something I've always struggled with myself is the word prog being so, or progressive or whatever, being so nebulous, and like, what does that even mean to people? Because to everyone, it means something different. Like to people that grew up in the 60s and 70s, it might be like, oh, the sound of Yes or King Crimson. And like, to me, I don't know, I just hear something and I like, oh, that's a progressive sounding thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know what specific qualities make it progressive. I guess maybe, I mean, is it time signature weird stuff? Is it, you know, harmonies? I just don't know. So it's like kind of that know it when you hear it kind of thing for me. So yeah, I mean, there are definitely elements of classic progressive music in Virus and some not so progressive elements. And I guess the combination of both things, I guess, is what gives us a sound. If people think we have our own sound, you know, then that would be why, I suppose.
Absolutely. Well, and it's one of the thing, I think, as time goes by, we see so much more of a blending of musical genres and things that kind of come together. It's just part of the evolution. I mean, you could have purists that go, oh no, this isn't. I mean, by the same token, if I'm not mistaken, you're playing on a 6-string Dingwall, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so your purists would be ranting and raving about you having more than 4 strings and not playing on a P bass. So, I mean, in the evolution of things, it's just that creative license that you have, the ability that you have to be able to do more and different. I guess this is probably a good time to talk about gear. Again, you are playing on one of those fan fret Dingwall basses, and I'm seeing a lot more of those in the prog rock arena. That seems to be kind of they kind of be an iconic instrument for that genre.
Yeah, seems to be. I mean, they've kind of figurative monopoly on the sort of metal world. It's like everyone wants one who plays this kind of music. I mean, they're so versatile as well. It's like, you know, it's not just for metal. It's you can do it for anything. But I mean, I got it right here. Yeah, so here it is. I don't know if it's showing up well.
Sure.
But it's an Afterburner 6-string deal there, and let me get it back. I have it tuned to F sharp standard. So now I'm trying something different. So it's got a low F sharp, got a low 170 gauge string on it. And then the rest, you know, B through G or the normal gauges. But truthfully, that's why I'm playing a 6-string right now. I mean, I did have it tuned from B to C, the standard 6-string tuning, but it was like, I just don't use this high C, like, ever. Why do I even have it? And then I thought, well, I would love to have a lower string so I could, you know, play an octave below the 8-string guitars when I need to. Mm-hmm. You know, and use it sort of as like a nice tool to kind of ramp up the energy to that even lower note, you know, as opposed to playing in the same octave, which I do still sometimes, but it, you know, depends on the part.
And you play with a pick as well?
Yeah, I do both. So I started doing that because the original Haken bass player, Tom, I saw him doing that, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because, you know, so many people are one or the other. They're like, oh, you know, if you're playing rock and roll, you need to play with a pick. If you're playing bass, you need to play with fingers, da-da-da. But I've always just kind of, I've always wanted to explore every sonic possibility that I can, especially for music like Haken's, because it's so, I mean, each song's different, and each song can kind of go its own place, you know, and there's, I don't know, there's so many different styles and things. So I tried to learn picking, and I played guitar for years anyway, so it didn't take that long to get the idea. So yeah, for some sections I'll use a pick, and I'll throw it in my little pick holder and go to fingers. Yeah, I mean, some slap sections here and there, so I just try and do anything I can to match what the music calls for.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what kind of strings are you using?
Yeah, I'm using the Dingwall strings. Mm-hmm. I used Pace and strings for the multi-scale instruments in the past, and I loved those, but I just, I wanted that low 170, so I contacted Dingwall. I was like, hey, you guys make these? And they're like, yeah, we do. So started using those, and I think I could be wrong, and I might, I don't know. I think they're GHS maybe, but like rebranded under the Dingwall name. I could be wrong about that, so don't quote me. But
sure.
I think so. So yeah, I like the way they sound, and when they get old, they still sound good. They still have that kind of, they just kind of sound like, old James Jamerson-y kind of, a lot of rust, that super dirty sound. I kind of like that too. So yeah, I love them.
Very nice. And then amplification-wise, what are you playing on?
Yeah, so when I'm touring, I don't use an amp. I use a DI box.
Sure.
Because, well, there's a lot of flying on the touring schedule, and so naturally I do not want to, I don't know how people even transport amps. Do they fly them over? Do they, put them on a cargo ship? I don't know. So I use a Noble DI preamp box. I think I saw Tim LaFave using them first, and guys like Sean Hurley and people like that, and like more session guys, I think. And I was like, oh man, that sounds so good. I want to try that. So I contacted the guy that makes them, and he made it. And it's compact. I mean, it's only yay big, so it fits on a pedal board, and it's all tube, and it's got a little two band EQ thing, and so I just plug all my pedals into that, and it sounds like an amp to me.
Very cool. And as you brought up pedals, do you have a particular array? A pedal board can get pretty vast, but
yeah, it totally can. And I used to throw 8 pedals on my board and be like, yeah, I definitely need this chorus pedal for this one part of the set. But I stopped doing that. I just kind of made a meat and potatoes kind of bass rig for flying purposes. So I have a tuner. I have the TC Electronics Polytune, that everyone has. And then at my board right now, I have the Cali 76 compact bass Origin Effects, which I think is an 1176 kind of clone. And then I use all the Dark Glass stuff. I use their compressor, their hyperluminal. I use the Alpha Omega Ultra Live, as well as the Vintage Ultra and the B7K Ultra and all those things. Yeah. Kind of switch between whatever I'm feeling. And I haven't used the newer stuff. I know they have the Atom out now, as well as the Microtubes X or whatever it is, the sort of multi-band distortion. I haven't gotten to use those, but I want to try them out. And I also use a way huge pork loin for just a slight amount of kind of tubey saturation in the signal. So, on my clean finger playing, I'll throw that on.
Nice.
And then just an ISP decimator for noise reduction because of distortion and all that.
And are there any other elements in your sound chain or gear, things that are particular to you that give you your iconic sound?
Oh boy, I hate to be the guy that's like, not really, but no, I love having, a few pedals. Like, I have this too. I should probably mention, like this octave pedal. I love this thing. It's kind of like an OC2, but Tim LaFave version. Yeah, no. So I guess maybe that's sort of why I sound the way I do, is because I don't use amps. I just plug a bass into a DI and have a few pedals on all the time, and maybe a lot of people love using amps, and that's why they've got their sound, and my sound's just like a bass into a DI, bang. I just want a bass to sound. I want to hear a bass. Sure. I've just never been able to figure out how to make an amp sound good through a cab live. I just don't get it. And this is just so much easier. Nothing too special going on, just a bass and some pedals.
Well, and historically, it's kind of interesting because a lot of people that listen to older bands, we've had inquiries like, what pedal is so-and-so using or something like that, like Zeppelin or way back in the day. And a lot of times they didn't have pedals at all. It was just the sound of that particular amp. And, if you try to replicate it, that's kind of what so many pedals are shooting for, is giving you an amp-like sound. And so it's kind of like the fake meat tastes like chicken. Well, this sounds like an Ampeg, or this sounds like a GK, or this sounds like this, but it's not. But that's the closest, because we always like to compare to something that we recognize. But I see a whole lot less amplifier sound per se. And it's usually kind of the players that don't want to alter their sound at all, that they just want the straight signal, more so if they're doing jazz or things like that, because they're not going to throw an octave or they're not going to throw distortion. You know, what, giant steps with distortion or something, that's just not going to happen. No. But, you know, it kind of is what the music is calling for and, you know, how that goes. So leaving the gear arena, what plans? I know as we're in the pandemic, plans went on hold for a lot of people as far as touring and things. I'm sure, again, with the album launching in June, it didn't have probably the normal launch pattern that it would have had there been accompanying touring and things to go with it. What's the plan for the future with you and Haken? Well,
at the moment, we are kind of wrapping our heads around the idea of touring again, starting next year, early next year, because, you know, at the moment, although things are looking up slowly, you know, with vaccinations rolling out and whatnot, it's still so unsure if anyone can play this year. I mean, maybe, you know, American bands can tour the U.S. or whatever, but we're toying with the idea of touring, you know, doing a European tour and a U.S. tour next year, and I think it's just safer to be, you know, to leave it for a while.
Sure.
So yeah, we want to do that. We want to get on the road again next year. Europe, U.S. right now, and Cruise to the Edge too, which is you know, the Yes cruise. I think that's, you know, gonna set sail in 2022, or at least I hope so. So right now that's what we're concentrating on, but also getting some new material together slowly. You know, hopefully, you know, start writing some tunes, and of course all the other guys are in the UK, so it's difficult to see them. I haven't seen them in over a year now,
sure.
So that's pretty weird. But yeah, so right now it's just we're kind of thinking touring possibilities and new album possibilities maybe in the future soon after that. So yeah.
Got you. And if people want to know what's going on, the best place to look would be hakenmusic.com.
That sounds right. I think that's the one. Yes.
We'll roll. We'll go with that one for the time being.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
And if people want to know what you're up to, particularly social media, is it at Connor Green Bass?
Yeah, so I have been Instagram. I'll admit to being a very bad social media guy. I don't get a lot of it. I'm a bit of an old man in that regard. But so I have an Instagram. I don't really post much of anything but like duck pictures. But I have a YouTube. I haven't made a bass playthrough video in a while. I should probably do that at some point. Yeah, just type my name in, I guess, bass, and there's something.
There you go. Well,
terrible self-promotion.
Well, you know, hey, it's again, kind of, it's interesting. As time goes by, musicians are having to develop a whole different set of skill sets and things. And so people that were, I'm going to say, kind of set in a traditional way, and it worked great for them. You know, I had the pleasure of chatting with Reggie Workman, who played back in the day with Coltrane and Monk and those cats.
How about that?
And again, his whole approach with technology and stuff is very different, because at 82 is like, you know,
yeah, what's he going to be tweeting all day?
I don't need to tweet, and I don't need to do this. You know, he gets people that may do, you know, help spread the word in some of those instances. Well, but anyway, Connor, we appreciate you taking time from your schedule, sharing with us about your journey in music, about Haken. Folks, make sure, if you haven't heard Virus yet, it is very contagious.
It's a pirate there.
I know. It was it's very cool. I really liked listening to it, getting ready to talk with Connor. So I think everybody would enjoy it as well. You've seen him here on Bass Musician Magazine. Connor Green, coming to you live.
Thank you.